we're starting to get close to the finish line.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And I've finally got round to finishing off the relicking work on the body. So that is now done on the front and the back and all around the sides and everything. So perhaps a little bit of kind of tickling up a little bit later down the line, but for the whole, that's all done. I've still got a few little bits and pieces jobs to do, and that's basically what I'm going to be doing in this episode, both on the body and on the neck. So to start that off, I'm going to get rid of kind of all this stuff. And I'm going to focus just for a little while on getting the main control cavity shielded. As you can see, I've put the ground wire from the bridge in as well, and we'll be dealing with that in a little while. But for now, I'll just tuck it out of the way in there. Obviously, it's not going to play ball. Just stick a bit of tape on that just so it's not bothering me. And like I say, I'll grab some shielding tape and make a start on this. And it should be a fairly straightforward job here. First off, I'm just going to just clean up any little fuzzies in there, because they will kind of make it a little bit more difficult for the shielding to go down nicely. And for the most part, it's just a case of kind of cutting some shielding that's going to fit down the bottom of here. So I'm going to have to do that in 2 pieces. And the way I like to do it is just tape it quite firmly into position. And then you can just run a finger around. And that will give you a good representation of the shape it needs to be. And you can just cut that out. And a pair of scissors. Now I'm going to do it so that the bits that I put in up the side are actually going to overlap slightly onto this bottom piece, so I don't need to make this absolutely dead tight fit. A little bit more off there. That should be good to go. Just drop that in, give it a good rub down. And then just kind of repeat for this bit as well. cut this out, stick it in exactly the same, and I'll get back to you with the next bit. And then with that bottom bit done, I've just marked this roughly with my scissors to give me a piece that's kind of the right depth. Like that. Say it's a little bit taller than the actual depth of the route, so I can just take that round the corner a little bit and overlap what we've already done on the bottom. This is a little bit fiddly, this, but with a bit of perseverance you can make a really nice job of it. And to be honest, this stuff is really cheap, so if you mess it up and have to throw a bit away, it's not a problem. Now in here, you see I've just come over the edge a little bit as well, because we do actually need this to make contact with the foil on the back of the pick guard, so we're getting continuity right the way through. Now sometimes this stuff doesn't have conductive adhesive on the back, so you can stick loads of it together and it doesn't actually form a circuit, which is really important, but it's quite easy to check if you just set your multimeter up for kind of the lowest ohms setting you've got, and you can just check that there's a tiny little bit of resistance there, so you are getting continuity right the way through the whole piece, which is brilliant. So again, I shall crack on, work my way around, and then join you back when we're somewhere near finished. And there we have all of the shielding in place. And kind of completeness, I've done the pickup cavities as well, and just before we leave that, I'm just going to check that we've kind of got continuity right the way through every section of this. And we don't have any through into that pickup cavity, so I think that's probably because these bits aren't properly covered. Just put an additional little bit on, and there we go. We're all sorted, so that's all good, and I think that actually looks quite nice. It's quite neat. I think it will do the job splendidly. So with that done, the next thing I want to do is sort out how this grind wire is going to attach into the control cavity. And I have discussed this previously. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these little kind of crimp-on connectors. In fact, I think I'll go with a blue one. It's probably nearer the size I want, which I'll simply crimp onto the end of this lead, and then that can screw into the shielding in the cavity, which in theory should give us an earth, because it will connect to the pick guard via this little bit of shielding that's overlapping onto the body, and we should get a good connection through that. But what I will probably do at some point is I will actually solder an extra lead onto the tone pot probably, which will then have another one of these on, and the two will screw together and give us a good connection. But for the time being, I think I'm just going to kind of get this one out of the way and done. Like I say, it's a pretty straightforward job. Bang that on there. Now you can just do these with normal pliers, but if you're going to do more than one or two of these, and if you've got an old car, you tend to do hundreds, you have the tool to crimp them on nicely. Quick old building there. And that'll screw into place. And with that now secure, I'm just going to take a little bit of this shielding tape, Just stick that wire in place so it's not going to be getting in the way. And with that work on the body completed, it's time to move back onto the neck and get this little string guide doohickey sorted out. Now, I have previously done a little bit of work on this area here, and I just thinned it out just a touch, and that now allows for the string guide to kind of sit just ever so slightly underneath the level of the frets, which is, for me, the ideal situation. There's quite an angle down to the tuners, and hopefully that will pull it nice and tight into that string guide and over the 0 fret. So the next trick is to actually put the slots into this, which will hold the strings. And I'm not sure how straightforward this is going to be, because the slots in the original kind of follow the profile of the guide all the way around. They're not just cut into the top. So I want to replicate that, which, yeah, there's going to be quite a lot of filing and it's going to be quite fiddly. But before we do that, we need to get the spacing established. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a tape over that 0 fret just so I can see my marking. And I've set this up, it's about 2 mil, and I'm going to kind of mark that from the end of the fret just to give me a little bit of space for the strings to sit in. And then I'm going to take my string spacing rule, my nut spacing rule, and I've already kind of worked this out, which is why I've got it marked with some tape, so that these 6 kind of marks in there, the inner ones, are the marks that I want for my string spacing. So with that established, I need to now get this set up into something to hold it nice and firm while I'm working on it. And I think what I'll do is I'll just cut a piece of wood that's kind of roughly the same thickness, which we can get in the vise, and then we can super glue and masking tape it in place. So we're back in a sec once I've got that sorted out. And hopefully that's nice and secure on there and it won't go anywhere. So then I can take my string spacing ruler, and I'm just going to kind of mark those in just with a little dot in the first instance, and then I'll square them across the top. And a couple of these are going to be quite tight to the end, but I'm sure it'll be all right. And then with that done, I can break out my nut slotting files and we can start to work these in. Now I'm hoping that this aluminium isn't so tough that it's going to kind of impact my files, because they are expensive and I don't want to mess them up, but we are where we are with this. I'm sure this is pretty soft aluminium, so they should be able to handle it. So I'm just going to start with the fattest. And at first I'm just going to put a little slot in the top like that, and then with that established, it's quite an easy job to just kind of drop the file down. And put that in the rest of the way. I might have to kind of just neaten that up once I get it off the block, but for now it's looking okay. And thankfully this is cutting in quite nicely, so I think we're going to be all right. So on to the next one. Now so far the files have been kind of quite thick and fairly rigid, but that's going to become less and less the case, and I think the final one, which is going to be kind of like a 10 thou, which, if I can find it, is very thin and very kind of flexible. That might be a little bit of an issue, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And then we're on to the last couple. And then the final one with this incredibly thin 10 thou file. Just get that started, then if you kind of put some tension onto this blade, it works a little bit better. And I think we are pretty much there with it. There's one or two of them look a little bit on the skew, so I might just have to kind of even them up a little bit. But I think before I can do that, I need to get it off here and into a different vise. I think we're okay with that. It's looking all right, but I think this one here is definitely veering off a little bit. So we just need to kind of get that in the vise and straighten it up a bit. But on the whole, I'm quite happy with that. I think we can kind of just clean that up a little bit and make it work nicely. And I think that looks okay. I think that looks pretty good. It's probably going to need a little bit of a clean up just to make it look a little bit nicer. Just take some of them rough edges off. But I think on the whole, that could have gone a lot worse. So I'm happy with that. Now the next thing we need to establish is exactly how we're going to hold this in place on the guitar, because the last thing we want is for it to be moving kind of side to side. So I don't think this is something I can glue in place. I'm thinking perhaps a couple of little pins in there to fit into corresponding holes on the underside of here. I'll have to have a look at that. Okay, so I've hunted through my little stash of little bits and bobs of metal, and I don't have anything remotely like the right size rod that we could pin this in place with. So I think for the time being we can just super glue that in place and hope that it holds out. But all in all, I'm very happy with that. I think it's gone quite well. I'll probably do a little bit of cleaning up work on it, just try and get it a little bit straighter and nicer, but functionally that should be fine, should work absolutely perfectly. So next up is I need to move back to the pick guard and get the new screws put in place on that to match the original. I've been out and I've bought a variety of screws to kind of try and replicate what's on the original. That's the little odd screw that's on the pick guard, and these are going to be for the pickups. Obviously they're all brand new, so we need to make them look a little bit older, and also these screws, the head's a little bit too big, so we need to kind of find a way of making those a little bit smaller. Shouldn't be too much an issue. And then, like I say, we've got to age all of the screws, including the pick guard screws. Don't want them to look rusty, because the originals don't look rusty, so we're going to have to kind of think of something else. But I'm running out of time on this episode, so that's going to be for next time. So I'll be back in a couple of days' time when we can start to do that. And then once we got that sorted out, I see no reason whatsoever why we can't get this guitar assembled in the next episode. So I'll be back in a couple of days' time with that. Until then, don't forget to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.